This sounds kind of bad, but I often find Christian fiction books to be a little bit cringy, so I'm going on a mission and I'm not gonna stop until I find one that isn't. Okay, so the books I'm going to be getting and trying out are If I Run. It seems really, really good. The Peasant King by Tessa Afshar. I also saw this one, it's called Unshaken. It's like apparently about the story of Ruth. I'm choosing this one first pretty much just because of the cover. So I do have some pretty high hopes for this book. It's cloudy, I think it's gonna rain pretty soon, so it's the perfect day to just read in my apartment all day long. I can't quite decide how I feel about it so far. It's not like one of those books that's like super easy to just like jump right in and pick up everything and like understand what's going on. Like I think this is gonna take a little bit more time to like slowly go through it. So it's the next day. I read a lot yesterday, but not nearly as much as I wanted to. I should also say that I have been somewhat in like a reading slump for a while. So usually when I'm getting out of a reading slump, the book that I try to use for it, I'm just like slow going with it. It's definitely not a bad book, and I can tell that this is the kind of book somebody would love, but I just don't know if it's really for me. I don't know if I'm that crazy about it. I feel like this book deserves me to at least read the whole thing, and I want to. But part of me is like, do I want to? Because it's not like the Christian book that I'm looking for, one that can really hold up against my other books that I really love. I just feel like maybe there isn't much of a point in finishing. Okay, it's a little bit later and I've been reading a bunch over the past couple of hours. I'm gonna read a little bit more before I go to bed, and if nothing really makes me super interested in it, I might just stop, at least for now. So clearly this first book was a dud. I don't know why I didn't stop it sooner, but the next book surprisingly had a lot of promise. But first, I feel like I should explain why I decided to do this entire challenge in the first place. The other day, I was back home at my parents' house and I found a random book sitting on the couch and I just casually started reading it. I right away realized it was a non-fiction Christian book. When my mom saw me reading it, she got super excited because for the longest time she's been wanting me to get into reading Christian fiction, which I usually don't read, but starting this book, although it was a little bit cringe, there was something pretty intriguing about it, which made me wonder, could there be a Christian fiction book out there that isn't cringe? I am now about a third of the way through If I Run. This book has a lot of potential, and I haven't said anything about it yet thus far until I got to this point because I didn't want to speak too soon, but I'm actually really, really liking it, and it has a lot of potential. You wouldn't really expect a Christian fiction book to be mystery thriller, I feel like. And even when I like ordered the book, I was like, there's no way it's gonna be like a traditional, really cool, like suspenseful mystery thriller. It's gonna be like toned down in some way, or like, I just thought it wasn't gonna be that great, but it actually really is. And then the whole like Christian aspect to it is actually blended in really nicely and really like subtly. It's not cheesy, and I don't really know how to explain it. It's just like very normal. The weather's really nice and I've been taking it outside and reading a lot, and it's just really fun. So this one has a lot of potential. While I was reading If I Run, I decided to go ahead and start listening to Unshaken on audiobook.
Tilting her head as you have returned.
And since this book was really short, I finished it super fast. I finished reading Unshaken and it was really good. It was pretty short, and honestly it was pretty much just like the book of Ruth in the Bible, just written out as a longer story with more details and backstory and stuff like that. The only thing about it that I didn't really think about before is that I don't know if you can really consider it Christian fiction, even though the story is expanded on in a fiction way. I don't think it's technically considered fiction, so I'm not sure if this one's gonna count. So my mom is a really big Christian fiction and nonfiction reader, and because I'm also a big reader, she is always begging me to read a lot of her books that she reads. So I've always just kind of said no to all of these types of books. But I think she knows that I'm starting to read more of these. So she is asking me to read a book. It's called Pilgrim's Progress. It is a Christian fiction book that she loves and has been begging me to read for such a long time, and I've always just said no because it never really sounded really appealing to me. But she is now texting me again asking me to read this book, so I'm considering for the first time ever actually trying to read it. I think it'd be fun to read it without telling her and then see her reaction when I finish it. I've decided that I'm gonna go to Barnes right now and try to find Pilgrim's Progress. I've decided I think I do want to try reading it, and I also might go ahead and get the second book in the If I Stay series because I know I'm going to read the second one of that too. This was not a very successful Barnes trip. I found out that the second book in the If I Run series is actually not in stock at this Barnes & Noble. I should have checked that before I came here. I found Pilgrim's Progress and I looked at it, and now I'm second guessing myself because I read like the first couple of pages and it's just written in really old English and it's very complicated, and I know it's just gonna be kind of hard to read. I think what I want to do is, if I do decide to read that, I'm probably just gonna listen to the audiobook because it's free on Spotify. So I am getting pretty close to being finished with If I Run. It's actually going really well. Love the storyline. I love the mystery to it. I just love mystery thrillers in general. It's very high suspense. I love the characters, and I'm hoping I can finish this by tomorrow, and then I'm hoping I can say that this will be a success and I did finally find a Christian fiction book that isn't cringy. But I wanted to really quickly talk about what has happened in this book since I last talked about it, because so much has happened and so much has changed, and my opinions on it have changed quite a bit. This book is really weird for me because there's parts of it that I really like a lot, and then there's some parts that just don't really make a lot of sense to me, or I just don't enjoy as much. The other thing that I've been noticing about this book is that about halfway through, or maybe even a little past halfway, almost like a new plot came up kind of just out of nowhere that almost became like the main plot really quickly, but it didn't really have anything to do with the original plot that I was reading throughout the majority of the book. So like I said, my opinions are kind of hard to explain because there's a lot of strange things about this book, but also I kind of like it at the same time. But as I kept reading later that night, something wasn't sitting right with me. Looking back, I was kind of scared at the time because this book was my last option. And if this book wasn't going to be the one Christian fiction that would hold up against some of my favorite 5-star books, then what book would? But the next day, after a long explanation, I decided it wouldn't work. And then I had an idea. I actually have the entire box set of this series. They are really popular, well-loved books, and it's also Christian fiction, so it's kind of perfect for this video. It is The Chronicles of Narnia, so I think I might try and read this and hope that it exceeds all of my expectations and it's everything I want in a Christian fiction book, and then I can be satisfied with this video. When I started reading this book, I got sucked in. I am loving this book. It's the perfect thing for me to read right now, being like kind of in a reading slump. I just finished reading The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The reason why I didn't film that much of me reading it is because I literally read it in 2 days. This book flew by. It's such easy writing to read quickly, and it's obviously pretty short. It was a really good book. I'm honestly kind of sad that it's over because I just want to keep reading it more. And even though it is written for kids, I feel like the story and the plot is complex enough for any adult to really like genuinely enjoy it. So if none of the other books counted, which they didn't, even though they were pretty good books, this one definitely does count. This one I would rate 5 stars. I love it. It really makes me want to start reading the entire series now. If I go back to the original purpose of this challenge, I'd honestly say that all the books I read were more or less a success. I don't think any of them actually made me cringe. The only reason why I kept searching was because I was just looking for the perfect book. But when I think more about it, finding a 5-star Christian fiction book after only 3 tries is pretty impressive. It just goes to show that I really had the wrong impression of this entire genre. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't, and oh yeah, I did end up reading Pilgrim's Progress.